Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Todd Talk. This is a podcast on all things leadership, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I am Todd Marshall Hearnsberger. I am the host of this podcast. I'm also the founder and CEO of Leadwell Solutions. So we're glad to have you with us today. And I have a very special friend. All my guests are special that I have on my podcast. However, this guy right here, we have had a very, very long history. This is Andre Picou. And so, Andre, I'm so glad to have you on. We have a long history, don't we?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do you
About
recall how long ago our friendship started?
40 plus years,
We
junior
actually
high
went to
school.
elementary school together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You remember what grade we started being friends?
No.
Fourth grade, my friend, because
Fourth grade.
that's when I moved to where you lived, a little small little country town right outside of a big city called Beaumont, Texas. And
Yeah.
so moved there in fourth grade, and Andre and I pretty much hit it off as friends way back in fourth grade. We were in the same grade. We went through junior high together, all through high school together, and we graduated high school. We went off to Bible college together as friends. And that was in Columbus, Ohio, where we moved all the way from Southeast Texas to Columbus, Ohio for Bible college together. And we've just been great friends ever since then. We've worked together in business together, same companies even throughout the years. So it's been a long, long time. So I don't know what the math is, but I'm so glad to have you on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So, Andre and I, because we know each other so well, we know leadership is a passion of both of ours. That's the reason I wanted to have you on, Andre, is because you do have a passion for leadership, and not only just passion for leadership in general, but you have a passion for healthy leadership. Both you and I together have experienced horrible leaders, horrible bosses, horrible supervisors in the past. And I want to kind of talk about that today. And what does it look like for a leader to have that title? What does it look like for them to be healthy? What does it look like for them to be unhealthy? Kind of tell me what your history is with some great leaders, some very healthy leaders, and some bad leaders that you've kind of served under.
Well, like you said, I mean, it is kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if you do anything long enough, you're going to experience just that. I've worked everything from a lot of like construction, blue collar. I remember my dad said, "You'll learn to work for me before I let you work for anybody else." That was one of the best things that I received from my dad because he was the boss. I learned the chain of command very, very quickly. But I think that the bottom line is that leadership obviously centers around people. And to be a good, healthy leader, you always have to be a student of people, learn about people and make them your priority and make people the center point, not the task that you want them to do.
I've always said that any leader who, if they just give directives all the time, like do this, do that, here's a project for you, let's check up in a week or so, do this, do that, all those things, to me, that is what I call a manager leader, not a real authentic leader, because a manager does exactly that. They are goal oriented. They want their team, their followers to do this and that. But a leader not only does some management, but in my opinion, they develop other people to be better people. Would that be the same
Yeah,
way you would see leadership?
I think so. It really does boil down to your people skills. One of the best leaders, people, bosses that I've worked for he was an older gentleman. He just was interested. He was just genuinely interested in me as a younger man. At times, he'd give that directive, but at the same time, with all that, he'd treat you like a brother. He'd treat you like a son at times. He really conveyed and communicated that he was interested in me as a person. That produced trust. I trusted him, and I looked at him as he was a friend, and it made me want to do whatever I was doing better because he was interested in me. It just built it was a good relationship.
So I want you to dig deeper. And you said he was interested in you and he inspired you, obviously, to want to do better.
Yeah.
What did he do more specifically that inspired you, that wanted you to do better? Was there or any stories or anything he said or any more details that you can give about what he did to pour into you
He shared from his own personal experiences and just life. And he was a Christian man, and that made it, kind of made it hinged on that. But just it wasn't just about the job and the things we were doing. It was about our lives, his life, my life. He had some good things to offer me, and he offered them in a very humble way. It just made me really value not only our working relationship, but his friendship.
So the way he treated you, it made you have a desire to want to be around him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know the definition of a leader from an academic definition is basically a leader is someone who influences other people to achieve common goals. John Maxwell, who is obviously a contemporary modern day leadership guru, his definition is more simple. Leadership is influence. Bottom line, that's how simple it is. Leadership is influence and that influencing of other people.
Yeah.
I mean, there are different ways you can influence people, but kind of tell us what your thoughts are. If a leader is created to influence people, what does that look like for you?
I look at it like this. What are you going to do when they're not around? What are you going to do when no one's looking? How much of your heart are you putting into it when nobody's making you do it? I kind of revert to my horse training years. I've trained horses for about 35, 40 years. And in time, I learned if I can influence this horse to get him to want to choose to do it on his own, I don't have to force much of, I'm just teaching him, training him, but making what I want easy and making him look for me, look to do on his own volition. But that takes relationship. And I've found that when you focus on building relationships with people outside of just the job, but taking the time just to express some interest and learn about them and treat them, value them, treat them like you'd like to be treated, then that produces a willingness to do, it produces the trust. It produces all the little buzzwords that people use in leadership to put on their PowerPoints and all that. But it's really just a bunch of what if you don't have the authenticity of investing in people, showing that you give a flip.
So you mentioned your experience with horses, and I remember as a kid, you had horses in your backyard because y'all lived on kind of a small farm.
Yeah.
And so you have become a master horseman. And I have seen you in arenas where you used a horse as an example, and you had an audience that you were actually using the horse and your interaction with that horse as an illustration on not just life issues, but also leadership. Kind of describe the people how that works, because maybe there's some people that would say, hey, man, that's a great way to illustrate being a leader or life, using horses as an illustration. Kind of explain that a little bit to the people.
Well, using the horse is good because they let you know what they think about things right away. There's not any time delay or lapse. And with people, things kind of happen. People take it, things kind of build. And sometimes it takes a while for that to surface and come to fruition. But with a horse, it's instant. You do the right things, you get to see the results and the process. So it's a really quicker visualization and teaching tool. And so we're able to demonstrate, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to lead. I'm going to be a good leader. I'm going to be gentle as possible, but I'll be firm as necessary. I'm going to make the right thing easy and make the wrong thing difficult. And I'm going to look to reward the slightest try. And in that process, you start to create a work partner, if you will, who becomes very willing and very apt to teach and very willing to guide and take along that journey and the things that you can accomplish in a lot quicker time. Almost limitless, really. You really get to fulfill their potential because you've taken the time to build a relationship, meet their needs, see what concerns him. There's a lot of things that like part of that process that there's things that concern horses, and that's a whole long list of things. But like a horse that's never been ridden. I remember you came out to our graduation party and we put you on. You rode our little mare, Sunshine.
Oh yeah, I remember.
I remember you. Todd never had much horseback riding experience, but he knew he was supposed to be in charge. And I remember you telling her, "Hey, you're going to obey me." But that's fundamentally, that is somebody has to lead, and you knew that. So then it's just a matter of, how can I get the horse to do what I want. And I don't want them to be afraid. I don't want them to fight. I want them to learn to trust and learn to follow. And that demonstration makes it a very, very clear, makes a nice picture. And who doesn't like horses anyway? So
Yeah, it really does. You and I have went to church together. We've went to Bible college together. We went to that church that actually owned the Bible college, and we've
yeah,
had that
yeah,
experience together. One of the reasons I wrote the book called The Dysfunctional Leader was because of my experiences of working under certain Christian leaders.
yeah,
I really hate to put that in air quotes, in the fact that you and I have both worked and served under ministry leaders that were not great leaders. They were not great examples of leaders. And that influenced me to write my book. And that influenced me to have a passion to say, we've got to bring light to this subject matter more of unhealthy, toxic leadership.
yeah.
Do you have any personal stories of unhealthy leaders that you have worked under, worked with, without sharing names,
Yeah,
obviously?
yeah, yeah.
Do you have any of those
Oh,
experiences
absolutely.
that you can kind of tell stories that someone can relate?
Um, Absolutely. We worked for a ministry years ago, and a lot of times people in leadership, they want you to have good ideas as long as it's their ideas. In the leadership that I teach, there's a portion of that, I call it more and less. And everybody wants more for less, but they're not really willing. They want more out of you,
Mhm.
but they don't want to put more into you. They don't want to get to a place where they can trust you and realize that, hey, that yeah, you're gonna serve them. They kind of just hold on to the rein. Like we're talking about micromanaging. They
Mhm.
hold on so tight, they're not going to give you any slack.
Mhm.
And what that does in the long run, it frustrates you. It frustrates them because they don't think you're doing what they would like you to do, which is really not true. It's just that you're not giving. So one of the examples of unhealthy relationship that we had is you had people that they were too busy to spend that time to make sure, hey, that yeah, you are on the same page. It's just easier to stand over you and kind of micromanage you in a way, and not give you the reins, the proverbial reins to do things, and that becomes very frustrating, and it produces a lot of friction, and kind of people want to say, well, fine, why don't you do it yourself? you know,
Well, and that's what I described. I did a video, just a little short video on the micromanager leader, which
yeah,
that's one of the
no,
topics I talk about in my book, The Dysfunctional Leader. And basically, the overall point that a micromanager leader would say is basically, without saying it out loud, is that I don't trust you enough to do the job right.
yeah,
Therefore, they have to be involved at a very high level to make sure that whatever task they gave you to do, that it's done according to what the leader really wanted it, but really doesn't trust you enough to do it. And usually go back and they make edits themselves or changes on things that you've done and worked on, or they've nitpicked what you're doing, or they're wanting details like if you made a PowerPoint slide, you used the wrong font. All those little bitty things, it's like they're
yeah,
basically saying, I don't trust you. It's almost as if you and I would say to a micromanager leader, well, why did you hire me?
exactly,
Why did you ask me to do this job or this project if you're going to come behind me and change everything up? Why don't you just do it yourself? That's kind of what I see a micromanager leader is, right?
absolutely. I've said for years, I thought, if you're in a position of leadership and you need someone to do a task, don't look for the most qualified individual. Look for somebody you trust,
Mm,
because if you don't trust them,
mm.
and a lot of times, of course, and as you that really the trust issue is with the leader. It's not really they don't trust
Yeah,
anybody,
yeah.
but it's really counterproductive. Well, go back to horse training and things. When you're working with a horse, I want to get them to a place of, hey, look, I'm not going to hold on, have a death grip on you. I want to teach you to go on a loose rein, because I might, and to go with one hand, where I can ride you with one hand, or drop the reins, because I might need to work a rope or a whip or do something else, or have lead another horse with this horse. But if you're riding him, but you won't let him go anywhere. You can't do that. So now you're very limited in what you can accomplish, because you're nitpicking and and standing over people, helicoptering, like helicopter parents and all that.
Hmm.
You're never giving them a chance to do things and make mistakes. Yep, Mistakes are part of it, but you're there to correct, to teach, to train in that process so that you get to where, hey, I don't have to tell you like horse, keep trotting. No, I do what I ask you to do. Keep doing that until we do something different.
So we hit on micromanager leader, but I want us to touch on another dysfunctional, unhealthy, even more of an extreme toxic. There's a spectrum of healthy leaders on one side, unhealthy leaders on the other side of the spectrum. And of course, the further the pendulum goes towards the unhealthy side, there are different levels of how extreme unhealthy leaders are. Micromanagers are definitely could be going definitely towards the unhealthy side, but there's one particular unhealthy leadership trait that really is toxic, and that is a narcissistic leader. In
Yeah,
fact, you and I have both worked for the same. We've served under the leadership of a narcissistic leader, and the narcissism was so extreme to where we all were miserable. Now, I had a little more encounter with this leader, more one to one, face to
yeah,
face, belly to belly than maybe you did, but you
yeah,
still
yeah,
had your experiences from your perspective.
yeah.
And I know who you know who I'm talking about, but
Oh yeah,
let's talk just briefly for what is a narcissistic leader? What does it look like to be narcissistic? What are the bad traits? All those things. Let's kind of unpack the narcissistic leader for the next few moments.
I think that you have someone that where that is definitely a person that needs to follow scripture, and I think that we could all be tempted to be so within ourselves, but scripture teaches us to not think so much of ourselves, not think too highly of ourselves than we should. And it also says, to treat others the way we would want to be treated.
A narcissist basically takes care of themselves and themselves only. They don't care about you as their follower. They want all the attention. They want to have everybody serve them as if they're a king or a queen. It's almost like they have an attitude of, well, I'm the leader. You want and should desire and want to love me as your leader because, after all, I'm the perfect leader for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything goes wrong and it wasn't you as the follower who didn't do the wrong thing, it was the leader, the narcissistic leader who did the wrong thing, they automatically turn the script and make you feel like you're the one that failed. You were the problem. And if you try to bring up an issue with a narcissistic leader that goes against them as their leadership, then you are the problem. It's all about them and not about the team that they are leading. It's a very big ego trip for narcissistic leaders because, again, it's all about them. Do you
Yeah.
have any stories with working with a narcissistic leader? I know we worked.
Not to that degree. I've worked with some people, coworkers that probably that fit that description. Well, you kind of like you said, it's just everything. It's about them, and if you do something, there's very little responsibility on their part because
Yeah.
it's your fault, and it's hard to get your head around that. For me, it is. We all need to be able to own our mistakes, own what we do, and work toward being peaceable with people,
Yep.
not just getting what's to our advantage. In the church, that's horrible because we're not supposed to step on people. You're not supposed to step over people. You're supposed to love. We're supposed to love people and give ourselves. What it said that greater love has no man than this to lay his life down for his friend. Lots of room to be more Christ-like in those situations.
So I have a personal conviction, and it's a personal perspective, but I believe you're going to agree with me on it when I say this. I think out of all the different types of groups of leaders that are out in the world, I think the Christian leader, the one who serves the Lord, the one who reads the Bible, the one who is a devoted follower of Jesus, I believe that leader should be the greatest and the most healthiest example of what a true leader is. But unfortunately, there are so many Christians who are in leadership roles, whether they're in churches, nonprofit organizations, Christian businesses. It doesn't matter. If you are a believer in Jesus and you are a devoted Christian, your leadership style should exemplify the greatest example of what a great, healthy leader should be. As I said, unfortunately, in the Christian church, there are so many leaders that are not healthy, that are not exemplifying
True.
healthy leadership. And as a matter of fact, if you study scripture and you watch the life of Jesus, you watch the life of Paul, you study them and their leadership styles, they exemplified a particular leadership style called what we call today in the leadership world servant leaders. Which servant leaders is the complete opposite of a narcissistic leader, to where the narcissist says, I want all of you to serve me and I'll help you if necessary. Where a servant leader says, I want to serve others, even people who are underneath me in authority. I want to serve them. I want to help them. I want to be in the trenches for them. I want to help remove obstacles for them so that they can do their job to the best of their ability. What's your perspective on what I just mentioned about Christian leaders should be the
I agree.
greatest example
I absolutely
of
agree.
leadership and setting the bar for the rest of the world?
100%. Jesus washed the disciples' feet before he was crucified. He was the one about to go to the cross. And so you would think the attention would be on him, but he girded himself with a towel and he went around and washed all their feet. And said, whoever desires to be the greatest, let him become the lead. Let him be the servant of all.
It's an
So,
opposite mindset. To
yes,
go up, we must go down. To
right.
lead, we must serve. So there's a lot of all these opposite principles that the Christian community should be following that is totally opposite than the world.
Healthy leadership. What do you know about people? It's a whole lot easier to lead people the more you know about them. And it's in people's nature. I mean, everybody likes to be on a pedestal. People like to be people. That in our flesh, that's normal. That you like that. It also says crucify your flesh. So you have to lead with intention. Go, with a directive to the okay. I need to be this way because I don't want to be carried off into pride and things, and we can all get there. A Christian leader should be the example, and I think that's up to us to, maybe come back, help set this precedence of say, hey, let's come back to just being a person. You pull your boots on just like I do, one at a time, and it all stinks. So we're not above anyone. We are here for each other to serve one another and let that be, that we glory in the Lord, that
Yeah.
he's glorified, not that we get, like you said, people in service and, people are escorting you in and escorting you out. You got all these bodyguard and things. And I don't know. I just want to be like Jesus.
Well, I just believe that we should set the example of what true leadership is. I've been leading teams of people of all sizes since I was 19 years of age. And I have always had the mindset that I want to serve those who follow me as a leader. And I would be the one that when we're doing an event together, instead of telling them, okay, you do that, you do that, you do that, you do that, and I'm going to sit here in this building and kind of wait till it's all done and then I'll come approve it. My thought, my mindset, my perspective was, I'm going to be out there with you setting up the event. I'm going to be out there with you that if there's an obstacle that someone is encountering and setting up an event, that I'm going to help you solve that problem right there on the spot. I'm going to be in the trenches with you working. I'm going to get dirty with you. And I believe I've had such a great following of people over the years is because I related with them. They watched me do the hard things with them. As a matter of fact, a great leader will always go before their people in doing a task. Rather than saying, you go do this, I'll guarantee you 100% of the time, and maybe I shouldn't maybe make it 99.9% of the time, if I directed somebody to do something to help me in whatever my responsibilities were, I probably 99.9% of the time have already done that task myself. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to be there before the people follow me ever did it so that I understood what they were going through. So
Sure.
how does that resonate with you, that mindset and that thought?
I agree. It's much easier to lead from the front. If you're in the back, pushing and driving people, that's a different deal. But yeah, it's easier to lead from the front. And you're the first one in, the last one out. That in and of itself, like you're saying, you're doing it with them. Vision, you're giving direction and going together. It's hard to trust somebody that their boots are too clean. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
You don't have any poop on your boots. You're probably full of it yourself. So that's what I think nowadays we become so technical, advanced in things where it's really human side of things. The interaction has really been hurt and been lacking. It's easier just to send an email than it is to pick up the telephone and make a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to sit and meet with people. Now this is cool. I mean, we get to meet because we're 1,100 miles away, so this is kind of cool. But I think that the personal interaction with people, where you get to know them and you are investing in them intentionally, putting into them because you want them to go with you. You want them to come with you and produce that relationship that will yield that outcome.
So I have found over the years of leading people that one of the greatest ways to develop other people. Now, when I say develop other people, I'm talking about pouring into them like a mentor or a coach. Now, the definition of a coach is that a coach will pull out of you where a mentor pours into you, kind of two different roles, two different responsibilities. And whenever I would lead people, I love coaching moments. I love when someone comes to me with a problem, whatever they're working on, that I sit there and say, okay, let's work this through together. Rather than me give them the answer to, oh, here's what you do, go do this. I kind of use it as a coaching moment, as a development moment to say, okay, and I ask them questions. Okay, if this is happening, if you did this move, what would the outcome be? And let them answer that question. Well, what if we do this other option and we did that? What do you think the outcome would be? And then let them answer that. And then I
Yeah.
would kind of coach them through a solution to a problem rather than just giving them the answer. To me, that is what a true leader is they coach, they mentor, they develop. A
Uh-huh.
manager, again, as we talked about earlier, they simply just tell, go
Dictate.
do this, go do that, and I'll inspect it later. And if something's wrong, I'll tell you if it's wrong and then have you go fix it. That's the difference. I just wanted to share that with you because I know you agree with me on all of that. What are your thoughts on that type of leadership?
Well, I think certainly that's a good style. A lot of people learn very well that way versus someone that just dictates. You are in that kind of situation leading. You're fostering communication and an idea and thinking process that helps you get to know how they think,
It
as
really
well as making them feel like I actually get to have a say or use my brain. And so I think that's a very good way to lead. When I'm working with people and horses, it's a little different spin on that. I say, hey, this is what I want you to do. Here's why. What do you think? Because you've got a 1,200-pound animal. Sometimes sometimes it's not a forgiving a situation, but you want to, either way, you want to encourage communication, ask, what do you think or how?
yeah.
And that builds value, that builds trust, that builds a very good rapport. Working with just training a horse, I will set them up. I don't just I want to give them a cue and put a little pressure on them, but let them find where that release is.
Mhm.
Not force them to do it, but just create enough pressure where they look for it. And then as soon as they find that, then that pressure goes away. I want them to look and to begin to think a little bit because that makes it easier to go to the next step.
I know in animals you can't give a why. You said something really really important, and helping people who follow you understand the why of some of the decisions that you are making as a leader is important
Mhm.
because with humans you can explain why. And there are a lot of leaders who will give directives or will make policies or will create systems and processes but never help anybody understand the why they are doing it. They'll make a
Yeah.
rule, but they don't explain why they're making the rule. And so you have followers who are following a rule that doesn't make sense to them, and a why is never given to them. And so they feel frustrated for following a rule that they don't understand why it was created.
Sure.
And I think that's important, that as leaders, that if we create something, a rule, a guideline, a policy, whatever it may be, to help give a reason why we're creating that so that they can understand and process it better. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. This is the fundamental, the foundation is that some people, they just don't want to deal with people. They just don't want to explain why, to do the things, have the conversations that help build trust. But why are you doing that? I'm not going to just walk across the street blind. If you're not going to tell me why, that takes time. That takes intention. That takes giving of themselves to help their people accomplish that. Building a team, building influence, and a lot of people just don't want to do that. And I think that nowadays we've kind of, the pendulum, as you say, has swung so far over that a lot of people have lost that. They don't even see. They just think what leadership is. We have these huddle meetings and we give the directives and okay, ready to break. We're going to go run the play. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work very well, very long that way.
Yeah.
You have to invest in people. You
Yeah.
have to be willing to take the time. It's like I never walk behind a horse until I've done a certain amount of groundwork, of a certain amount of work, and building the relationship. And once I get the fear and out and the follow in, and he's coming around following me and doing that of his own choice, then I'm more comfortable and I'm doing some other things. But otherwise, hey, don't go back there, because if you're not back there, you can't get kicked.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you that it's because if you go back there and get whacked, that's going to be not good. And then I'm an irresponsible leader because I didn't tell you, hey, look, you don't want to go. Why not? Well, because that's not like getting punched by your older brother. That's like getting clobbered with a baseball bat upside the head.
Wow.
So good to know.
That is good to know.
To be a responsible leader, we need to have those conversations with people, explain why, encourage communication, let them know that there's reasons that we do things, and follow through with that.
Well, we're getting to the end of our podcast time. And Andre, I want to thank you for being on here again. We stay in contact quite frequently. We've done that for decades now, staying in contact, even though you live in Ohio and I live here in Texas, we still call each other frequently and stay up to date with each other. So you're a special friend to me, and I've always had great admiration for you. If there's anybody that I knew would take a bullet for me, you would be one of the ones that would take a bullet for me, and I would do the same for you. So your wisdom, your knowledge on leadership and using the